Absolutely incredible story happened with Guram Grdzelishvili. The contact was with a specific civilization, including both simple communication and surgeries. As a result, after these contacts, all chronic ailments disappeared. There were other, absolutely fantastic things. Before he tells us his story, Guram's friend and colleagues will say a few words. Guram Grdzelishvili has been working with us for 12 years. He is disciplined and good person. He fulfills all orders at a high level. Last year, Guram Grdzelishvili disappeared for 2-3 days. Right before our eyes, a man came to his sense. He was completely ill, thin, unhappy, and he had hardly worked. He worked half a day and then left, and didn't come to work for weeks. And then suddenly he completely changed. He recovered after this incident, got stronger, and got back to work. It all started on September 9th, 1989. It was about 9 or 9:15 a.m. I got into the car and drove to work by a more convenient route for me. I drove about 150 to 100 meters when I saw a woman dressed in black on the side of the road. She was dressed like a nun. I saw her waving at me to stop. I stopped the car and opened front door, thinking she would sit next to me, but she closed the door and sat in the back seat behind me. I told her that I would take her to the Nazaladevi metro station, as I had to go to work and I had no time, and I would not take money from her. She sat quietly and didn't answer. When I started the car, she covered my eyes with her palms. I said, "What are you doing?" And at that very moment, she pressed her hands harder on my eyes. I began to resist, and when I stopped the car, she removed her hands. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I showed you respect and gave you a lift." At that moment, I understood that I saw nothing. I was blinded. I swung at her. I had the strength since I was an athlete. I didn't feel whether I hit her or not, but later I learned that I did. Then she brought something to my nose so that I would inhale it. I was totally blind and didn't see what it was, but the smell was unpleasant, like the smell of rotten eggs or rotten meat. After that, I lost consciousness and didn't remember what had happened afterwards. I didn't remember whether I had started the car or had driven somewhere. I remember absolutely nothing. When I woke up and looked around, I realized that I was in the forest. And I was lying on a white cloth on a small field. While I was lying, I saw bushes, trees, and I understood that I regained my sight. My clothes were hanging on a bush, but I didn't see my car. Then I looked around, and I couldn't believe what I saw. What happened to me? Recently I was sitting in the car and now I'm laying in the forest, I thought. I saw a small gorge there and my car was parked nearby. I went to the car, got inside and tried to start it. But it wouldn't start. Then I opened the hood to fix the issue, but I couldn't detect the problem. At that moment I felt burning on my back, as if I had been touched by a hot skewer. I left the car and went down again to find someone to help. I saw this man leading the cows. It turned out there was a farm nearby. I went up to him and asked him to see what was on my back. He laughed and thought that I was mocking him. I said that it burned very hard, and wouldn't he be so kind to see what was there? I lifted my shirt. He said in amazement that something was burnt on me. The burn looked like a parachute with geometric shapes depicted on a background. I asked him where we were. He said that we were in Mankodi forest, 15 kilometers away from Tbilisi. I stopped the passing car and explained my situation. I told him that I was in a poor state, showed him my back and asked for help. The man agreed to help me, and we went back to the car. He started checking it and found foil from a pack of cigarettes on the battery terminals. I had no idea why they put it there. Maybe they didn't want me to get behind the wheel and drive, so I wouldn't get into an accident in such a poor state. I tried to drive, but I couldn't because of my poor health. I was drifting to left and right. Then we decided that this taxi driver would go for help. I gave him my home address, and soon he arrived with 3 of my friends. We got into the car, and they drove me home. Then I brought them up to date, and one of my friends offered me to go on television. When we got there, they listened to my story and took pictures of my back. And as they saw that I was in a poor condition, they told me to write down everything that happened to me and come in a few days for an interview. I left the house, went to the subway. I saw her standing at the entrance to the subway. She was wearing grey dress and shoes. She was brown-haired. She tells me, "How are you, Gouram?" "Okay," I replied. "Are we fine?" she asked. "When I fought you." I answered, "How? You didn't fight?" She said, "No." She took off her glasses and showed me the scar on her left temple. It turned out this scar appeared after our fight in the car. While being blinded, I was waving my arms. Of course, what I did was wrong. A man should never hit a woman. But I went blind. At this moment, I lost control of myself. She offered me to get in the car. It was Zhiguli, a Soviet-made car based on Italian Fiat. She opened the door and I sat down. The man was leaning on the car. He had black glasses and was tall. I thought he was the driver. I got into the car and saw another man behind the wheel. A man was wearing grey suit. I sat down in the middle, and they sat on either side of me, although the front seat was empty. The driver started the car. We drove about 35-40 kilometers. All this time, driver held the steering wheel and didn't take his hands off it. He didn't switch gears. When he had to stop, he didn't take his hands off the wheel. I noticed that a cord was coming out of the driver's left ear. This cord was thinner than a telephone cord. This cord went from the driver to the left hand of the man who was sitting next to me. The woman took out a bottle with a pleasant scent and applied it to her hair, and then she brought it to my nose so that I would inhale it. After that, I felt that my eyes were closing and I wanted to sleep. We drove about 100 to 200 meters. I remember that. Then I passed out. I opened my eyes, and when I came to, I was sitting in a chair. The cabin wasn't big, 2 on 2 meters with high ceiling. I realized that I was in a flying saucer. Then a woman enters the cabin and asks, "How are you, Gouram?" "Okay," I answered. "Come out," she told me. We left the cabin. I looked around, and at that moment I was already sure that I was in a flying saucer. We returned back to the cabin. She said to me, "We will fly. Aren't you afraid?" "No," I answered. "Will you sit or lie down?" she asked me. "I will sit," I said. "Are we in a flying saucer?" I asked her. "Yes, we are in a flying saucer," she answered laughingly. She was dressed in a spacesuit just like me. Oxygen cylinders were attached to her legs. Then she went out, and the moment she closed the door, I heard the sound like 2 stones hitting each other. After that, she began to ascend, gaining altitude. I wanted to look through the window to see where we had been and how the ship would take off. But my eyes began to close and I fell asleep. I don't know how much time has passed, and I woke up as we began to land somewhere. Apparently, at low speed, a person is already coming to his sense. I think so. Was she alone on this ship? Yes, at that time she was alone. I didn't see others. When did she give you to eat something that tasted like honey? It was later, when they took me for 3 days. It was in 1991. And what I am telling now was back in 1989, in 2 gears. The ship landed. I looked through the porthole and saw that there was neither forest nor water. There was nothing, only bare earth. I assumed it was the moon, as I learned from the books that there were no forests, grass, or water on the moon. This woman comes to me and asks, "How are you, Gouram? Get up." "Good. Where are we?" I asked her. "None of your business," she answered me. I stepped down the ship. The staircase had only 6 steps. At the bottom there was a strange carpet. It looked like as if you had taken branches and woven carpet from them. I went down, then we went forward for about 5-6 meters. Can you describe the flying saucer? Well, there are many drawings of a similar ship, as if 2 plates were laid on top of each other. It was a round green object. There were portholes around the entire radius of this ship. The room I was in was not big, 2 on 2 meters. There were 5, 6 windows in the cabin, as I remember. There was no light since it was a daytime. We were walking in spacesuits on this planet. I thought it was the moon, as we knew that on the moon there was weak gravity and human weighted 6 times less, and if you jumped, you would rise higher than on Earth. I knew this from the book and I started jumping. At my first jump, my legs leveled the woman's chest. She told me, "Gouram, what are you doing? You will fall." "I will not fall," I replied. I moved away from her a little and said, "Now you are in my hands. You brought me here without my permission. Now I'll have fun," I thought. I moved 20, 30 meters away from the ship, and there I saw a huge crater. It was so big that I couldn't see the end of it. There was a mountain nearby. It seemed that someone brought this 100-ton stone and placed it there. The ground on this planet was very dry, like when the cows trample the dirt, and it dries up in the sun. It was such a rough ground. The color was somewhere in between gray and yellow. Since it was daytime, the sky was clear blue, though I didn't see the sun. We stood at the crater, 20, 30 meters away from the ship. When I turned towards the ship, I saw 3 tall men standing next to it, also dressed in spacesuits. Only our spacesuits were green, and theirs were light beige. I couldn't see their faces. What did these men look like? Taller than me. As I stood far from them, I couldn't see them well. They were in spacesuits. Their faces were not visible. I decided to annoy them a little and went down into the crater. I couldn't go down the crater from my side because there was a steep descent, so I took a gentler slope. "What are you doing, Gouram? You will fall. I won't be able to get you out of there," she told me. "I will not fall. I was born and raised in a village, and I know how to climb," I answered her. I went down the slope for about 20 meters. She kept worrying and telling me, "What are you doing? Come up," in bad Georgian. Those men by the ship were also looking at me and talked among themselves. They were afraid that something would happen to me, as the crater was very deep, about 200, 300 meters. I got up and started jumping again and asked her, "Are we on the moon?" I asked. "None of your business," she replied. We were there long enough, for about 30 minutes. When I looked towards the ship, those men were no longer there. They entered the ship. We went back and I climbed the stairs and went into my room. I was seated as I was before. After that, I had fallen asleep. I didn't remember how we took off. When I woke up, the ship was already landing. I didn't know how long the flight lasted because I had been sleeping all the way back. The ship landed in the forest. There were no men to be seen, only this woman came out to me. We went out. She helped me to take off my spacesuit, helped me to get dressed. She also took off her spacesuit. Then I saw that a car drove up to us, and the driver told me to get into the car. He didn't ask my address, neither where I came from. He brought me straight to my house. Then I asked about payment. He looked at me and said, "Aren't you ashamed? I need nothing." He looked and spoke like an ordinary Georgian man, without any accent. It was already nighttime when I came home, and my family started to ask me where I was. Where did I disappear? Well, I joked that I was with a mistress. When the ship landed, you were already conscious. How did it land? It landed very smoothly, and I only heard a subtle sound, like when the plane stops and you hear the sound from the turbines. Something similar to this sound, only very quiet. Whether the inertial force was felt in the ship, such as in a car during sudden acceleration or deceleration? No, not at all. Then the meetings went. God knows how many times we've met. Can you describe the cabin you were in? Yes, of course. There were white walls, so white that they were glowing. There was no light source. It felt like light was coming from the walls. There was only the armchair on which I sat. It was white and leather-like. The door to my cabin had a very neat handle. It didn't take much effort to open the door. Has she spoken to this man in front of you? No, she hasn't even come close to them. Who do you think was in charge of this ship, her or them? In my opinion, men. They were pilots, and she was my contactee. God knows what they wanted from me. After that, we met many more times in Mankodi forest. How did you know the place of future meetings? Who warned you? This woman appeared right next to my bed. Or at the end of our meeting, she told me where we would meet next time. For example, at that tree or stone. And I came like an obedient lamb. For example, if I didn't want to go there and wanted to go to work, despite my will, I would still go to the forest. No matter how late I was, she was always waiting for me. What did you talk about? About everything. Didn't she tell you what planet she was from? No, I asked, by the way. What did she tell you? It's not your business. You will find out, but later. What did she want from you? I don't know what she wanted from me. How did you understand that she was an alien? She spoke poor Russian and poor Georgian. There was talk about aliens at that time, and I accepted her as an alien. Yes, hands, legs, nails, eyes, sight, everything looked like she's human. But she didn't look like Georgian. She had high cheekbones, like Kyrgyz or Japanese. Did she have a sense of humor? Yes, of course. She joked and laughed. Did you touch her? Yes, of course. I even hugged her. We can't do this. How many times do I have to warn you? She told me. You couldn't have physical contact? No, it was forbidden. Not even a kiss or hug. I'm not talking about more serious stuff. I have tried to get closer. She's an attractive woman, after all. I'm a healthy man. So what if she were an alien? I'm not talking about physical closeness. I just wanted to make out with her.
Provođe, nada. Nada, Miluša, že nada, no tak nada.
Надо, как со всех сторон изучить.
Ke ara, kheli tu kerchi rame, vara.
Человек, да, была?
Da, vrodi.
Can you describe her appearance? She had high cheekbones like the Japanese, classic face, brown eyes. She was a young woman, about 30 years old.
Расскажите про руку вашу, как она...
Can you tell us about your arm? Yeah, it happened after I tried to make out with her, and I didn't succeed. It was our fifth or fourth meeting. It was about 4 or 5 a.m. Before we met, I drank a little brandy and I allowed myself too much. After I persisted, she told me that we couldn't do this. But I didn't give up trying. You will regret it, she told me. She went behind the bushes and vanished. I stayed alone. I started looking and calling her. I thought that I should go home. I headed towards the highway. I never left home without cash in my pocket. When I walked past the bushes, I saw a wolf. I grew up in a village and I saw wolves as I see you right now. Since I was an athlete, I had strength. But there was no use of it because I hadn't either a stone or a stick to protect myself. I jumped on a branch. I can still climb a tree and collect nuts. I jumped on a branch, wanted to climb a tree, but the branch broke off and I fell to the ground. When I fell, I realized that I hurt my hand. I didn't saw a wolf, but I climbed a tree again with an injured hand. When I checked that the wolf was gone, I got down. I stopped a car and was given a lift back home. In the morning, I saw that my hand was swollen. I have visited many surgeons. The bone fell out of the joint, and whatever the doctors did, it didn't help. Time passed. I met this woman again, and she asked me, "How's your hand?" Bad. Bone fell out of the joint. I saw a wolf and climbed the tree, but I fell and injured my arm. The doctors inserted the bone. Yes, but after a day or two, the bone fell out again. I had suffered for 3 months. And during our meeting, she told me, "Look at this tree. There is a large stone next to it. You should be here at 9 a.m. I will meet you here." "Okay," I said. The pain was so intense I couldn't walk. When I arrived, she wasn't there yet. I sat down on a rock and fell asleep. I think she did something to get me to sleep. I don't know how much time has passed. I forgot my watch at home. I thought I had been unconscious for about 2 hours. When I opened my eyes, it was already daytime. I saw her standing next to me. "Hello, Gouram," she said. "Long time no see," I told her. "How's your arm?" she asked me. "Bad. Hurts very bad. There is no doctor who can cure me," I said. "And now, at this very moment, do you feel pain?" she asked. "No, I don't feel pain." I tried to move my hand, but there was no pain. I was shocked. "You'll be smarter," she told me. "She healed you, yes?" "Of course. This wolf is also her job. She turned into a wolf. There is nothing that they can do. They know everything. We know nothing." I came home happy, called my friends and neighbors, showed them my arm. They all knew about the situation, and they all believed me. "Did you feel like she was doing something while you were sleeping?" "No, I was unconscious. When she came or what she was doing, I don't know." "At night, when she came to your bedroom, how did she get into your house?" "I don't know. I still wonder how she appeared in my bedroom." "Your wife was lying next to you. Didn't she wake up?" "My wife didn't lie next to me. When this contact began, my wife didn't sleep with me. It was her idea because I gave her an electric shock, and she felt bad. That's why we slept apart." "Did you ask this alien woman why this was happening?" "No. How many times have I prepared for a meeting, thought questions up, and when we met, I forgot everything. She somehow turned me off and set me in other thoughts."
А еще они вам какие-нибудь операции делали или какие-нибудь
"Did she do any other surgeries for you?" "Yes, I had a wound from a surgery that was done to me in 1986. It didn't heal in any way. Pus with blood constantly came out of it. The boss sent me to Raj through a car. He told me to stay there as long as I wanted. You can't work with such a wound. 3 years have passed since the surgery. When at one of the meetings I told her about my problem. "Show me," she said. A few days later, we met again in the forest, and she asked me, "How's your wound?" "No more pus or blood. I feel good." "That's good," she said. "What manipulations did she do?" "So that I could see nothing. She must have turned me off as usual. It happened many times we met, talked about something. Then she turned me off. And when I came, I looked at the clock and 4 or 5 hours have passed. I don't know what she was doing all this time. I was like a lamp to her. Took me whether she wanted, did what she wanted with me. I felt nothing." "What did you talk about?" "On ordinary topics. She didn't talk to me about planets or aliens. I don't have an appropriate education. I'm not a physicist or an astronomer. We talked about simple things. I was more involved in her conversation. She asked me about humans' lives, about our technique. Did you serve in the Russian army? She asked me. Yes, 3.5 years I served in the Soviet strategic forces. The nuclear ICBMs were 56 meters high. Not in details. I told her everything in general. Did she ask about the political situation? No. Social structure? No, not about politics. She wasn't interested in these topics. Only armament. She asked a lot about weapons, and I tried to tell as little as possible about it. I was warned in the army that secrets should not be given out. Did she ask anything about Georgia? Yes, about our lives. More specific, what salaries do you have? Is it enough? What do you eat? I answered as it was. Back then, we couldn't buy meat every day, as now too. Did she say anything about the future? Only if I asked. I was sure that she was an alien and told her to come here and teach us something. You live a better life, I think. You have better techniques. You're not gullible people. You'll kill us. You killed two of our people in the United States. It is true. I asked Thales about it. He said it was true. They caught 2-3 aliens, tortured them, couldn't take blood and tests, and killed them. And Sergei Ignatze told me about this case. He knows a lot about ufology. Hasn't she changed during this time? Has she grown old? Did she change her appearance, her hair? Almost not. We were in contact for 2 years, but she did change her face once. How? Thales was asking me to draw her face. And she told me, even if you were a painter, you couldn't draw my appearance. How's that? I asked. Like this. She moved 5-6 meters away, and she slowly made 360-degree rotation. Well, how would you draw me? She turned to me and said, and when I saw her face, she was a completely different person. Everything changed. Her eyes, brows, face structure. Of course I couldn't draw you, I told her. Then why did you say that you could draw me? You can't, she answered me. Thales was asking me to take a picture of her. I will give you a camera and you will quietly take a picture of her, he told me. She told me no camera will take a picture of me. My image will not remain on tape. There were a million more things which I don't remember already. Did she change clothes? Yes, of course. She wore green, black, white, brown dresses. She wouldn't wear the same dress for 2 years. She changed clothes just like we do. When did you get on the ship for the second time? Last night I was thinking, tried to remember everything in details. But 30 years have passed. Considering my age, something may fall out of my memory. The second time was pretty much the same. I was taken by car. It was white. We'll go and come back like the first time, she told me. It was 24th or 25th of October. I had been missing for 3 days. The police and Thales were looking for me. Yes, we were looking for you. My relatives, neighbors were looking for me. They thought that they had lost me. Before that, this woman offered to take me to her planet for 8 years. She told me to talk to the family, ask their consent, and mine as well. If she wanted to take me away by force, who would have stopped her? The family would not let me go, even if you were completely useless and stupid. Not every family would go for this. The people around me who know me well will tell you that I have done nothing but good to people. My answer to her offer to fly away for 8 years was in negative. Did you yourself really want to fly away? Yes, I really wanted. I could have learned something new. I told her, take me anyway. No, if your family doesn't agree, it's impossible for me to take you, she answered. Maybe I would have achieved a better life, not in monetary terms. To hell with wealth. And I could do good things to people by saving lives. What could be better? It didn't work out. What I did was stupid. I had to say that everyone agreed and flew away, would return as a good specialist, would not work as a shoemaker, but would be a specialist in some field, or surgeon. They wouldn't let me go without teaching me something. Before the second flight, I was warned in advance. At that time, I had already 45 surgeries done on me. When she healed your hand, did you go and show your doctor your hand? Yes, I showed my arm to that surgeon in the trauma surgery center. See, I said, you couldn't do anything, but she could. He examined, took a picture. He almost went crazy. The bone was in its place. Who healed you? He asked. I told him. And why didn't you go straight to her? Asked the surgeon. She broke it after my hooliganism. So it all started just the same. They took me, put me on a ship. Was there anyone else on the ship besides the woman? Yes, those men pilots, but I didn't see them while we were here on Earth. They appeared only when we were on another planet, and they got off the ship with us. On the second planet, I took off my spacesuit. The air was normal. I breathed freely. What did this planet look like? There was a forest, but the trees were all the same height, as if they were all planted in one day. They were neither young nor old, big trees. Maybe they just don't grow beyond a certain length. I don't know. Did you sleep all the way to that planet? Yes, of course. I didn't want to sleep, wanted to see everything. It is interesting to look at the alien nature from above. I was constantly looking out the airplane window every time I had flown to Russia. I had been working there for 14 years, plus the army. Didn't you ask her how long the flight was? No, I didn't. But she wouldn't tell me anyway. When did you land it on this planet? Did you immediately understand that this was not Earth? No, I doubted. I thought maybe it was Earth. But when I saw the big stones and the red ground, the ruins of houses, I understood that I was not on Earth. The ruins and the walls were up to one's waist there. They were not tall at all. One could see the places where the windows stood. There were no people anywhere, only the forest and these ruins. I saw insects, similar to flies and mosquitoes, butterflies. There was a lake or sea nearby. I didn't see the opposite shore, but I still thought it was a lake. There were no waves. I took a large stone and threw it into the water. By the way, I've been good at throwing stones in childhood. The stone fell into the water like in yogurt. There were no circles from the stone on the water, just a couple of lazy rings. Here, when you throw a stone into the water, many circles arise. What was the color of the water? Blue, as on Earth. But the ground and rocks were red. I thought it was Mars. I explored these ruins for several hours. I was looking for what the roofs were covered with, but there were no materials other than red stones. Judging by the appearance, the ruins were very ancient. Maybe 1,000 years, maybe million. It wasn't clear at all. I took a small red stone from there, gave it to Thales. I wondered how I managed to hide it from her. Here, in the laboratory, they studied the stone and couldn't establish the composition. The leaves on the trees were unusual. I grew up in the village in Raja, it's a region in Georgia. Nature there is very rich. Different trees grow there, but I have never seen such trees. The foliage was completely different. But green, right? Yes, green, like on Earth. Were there mountains on the horizon? The mountains were smaller than we have in Georgia. There was more flatland, like in Russia. And this woman, did she just stand there, looked at what I was doing and laughed? I was poking around in these ruins. I wanted to find something. And what happened then? Then we returned. We didn't stay there until the night. Did she tell you the name of the planet? No, she didn't. I thought it was Mars because Mars is red. You've spent about 1 day on this planet, right? Not all day, somewhere from 7 to 10 hours. What color was the sky there? Ordinary sky, like on Earth, blue. Have you been walking all these 10 hours? Yes, the ruins stretched for 300 meters. I walked hoping to find someone who lived there. She called me, asked me not to go far. I said, now you run after me. I was running after you, now it's your turn. I went very far, so far that I could hardly see our ship. But apart from the ruins of houses and the lake, there was nothing. You mentioned something about honey. Yes, she brought it to me in the cabin when we returned to the ship. You need to eat this, she said. Okay, no problem. Is it sweet? I asked. Yes, she said. I sucked the contents of the tube, mustard-like tube. I ate it and then didn't feel thirsty while we were flying from over there. I was not hungry upon arrival.
Какая была консистенция?
The texture was like honey. This time the saucer just hovered. As far as I know, you were lowered by cable, weren't you? Yes, they lowered me down, and immediately afterwards a car drove up to the ship, and they took me home. And the case when you underwent surgery and you woke up at the Academy of Sciences, your whole body was on fire and there were traces of the surgery on it. You already communicated with my father. I vaguely remember. When was it? After the third or fourth contact. You woke up in your car on Rustaveli Avenue, opposite the Academy of Sciences. Went down to the laboratory to my father. You had complained of burning all over your body, and when we took off your shirt, the whole back was covered with scars from surgery. Yes, 6 operations were performed on me then, on the neck and on the shoulder blades. Yesterday, I tried to remember everything in detail, but it didn't work out. Some moments are forgotten over time. Tell us more about Thales, about how he asked you to arrange a meeting with her. This was after I was away for 3 days. Thales kept begging me to arrange a meeting with her. I said, this is not some kind of a girlfriend. She's an alien, you can't. I have had more than 45 surgeries. That's why I can sustain contact with her. You couldn't endure the contact with her. She told me that he would feel bad. Why would he meet with me? What does he want to know from me? I won't tell him anything anyway, she said to me in Georgian. But after repeated persuasion, she agreed. I came out of the forest. Thales was waiting for me by the car about 30 meters in a straight line. She's waiting for you over there. It's about 30 meters in a straight line, I said. Thales went to her. I followed him, made sure that he found her, and went back. Was the ship nearby? I didn't see it, but I heard the noise of the ship. When your father went out, apparently, the ship was standing somewhere in the thickets. My attention was directed to Thales when he came out of the forest. He had no face on him, he could hardly walk, as if he had one foot in the grave. I don't know what they were talking about. Thales was in very bad condition. I tried to bring him to his sense. I took him to the car, rubbed his face with water. The meeting had a very negative effect on him. I asked a lot of questions and received a lot of answers, he told me. But he didn't tell me on what topics. He shouldn't have taken such a risk. What did she tell you after Thales got sick? Why did you bring him to me? She said. He didn't lag behind me for many months. He had been all over me. Did she tell you anything about our planet's future? We had a conversation about this. Sometimes I asked questions if she gave me an opportunity. Basically, when I wanted to ask something, I suddenly forgot it. She hypnotized me, or something like that. I don't know. She told me that she had to leave, but we would meet again. I can't say when, in a year or 5, but we will meet sooner or later, she told me.
Ни на какую планету вас не заберет.
Никуда. И мы прекратили встречи. Потому что она...
А как вы думаете, вот то, что она вот была как женщина земная, это она для вас?
Do you think she has shown herself to you as an earthly woman in order to make it easier for you to perceive her? She looked different on her planet.
Наверное, так было, да?
Поэтому не разрешала.
Yes, I think so. That is why she has not allowed me to touch her.
Когда во время ваших встреч
Да.
усыпляла вас.
Сирбилизас ярулев.
What about your health? Yes, my health has improved.
А ночью как?
That's why I live so long and still feel like a little boy. I can run
Вообще,
tirelessly
вот на протяжении всего
from
этого
morning to
времени,
evening.
вы спали ночью?
Чего? Хорошо.
Вам не
How
снилось
did you sleep at night?
ночью сны какие-то
Maybe you saw
странные,
weird
необычные?
dreams.
Страннее. Только я вспоминаю наш разговор все время.
Well, throughout the entire period of our communication, I slept well. I didn't see any weird dreams. I only thought about our conversations.
خدا ერთი გძელი მთვარე მაქვს ნანახი.
The second time she took me to another planet,
ერთი რგვალი
I
მთვარე.
saw 2 moons through the window.
А какая
Mars has 2 moons, so I thought it was it.
вот, допустим, как
One moon was elongated like a melon,
По-моему, это луна.
and the other was round.
ფეხს მიყვებოდა მტვერი.
Dust rose when walking.
დიდი ბოთინგები, დიდი ბოთინგები.
I was wearing massive boots,
მტვერი ცვიოდა ბოთინგებიდან და
and when I lifted my foot,
ნელა-ნელა.
dust slowly crumbled from it.
Перед Сахой.
და სულ ჩალდა.
A large stone lay nearby.
აი ამ ხელა ქვასავით ეგრე.
I raised it with both hands.
თვარეზე გონი.
It turned out that it weighs almost nothing, very light, not like on Earth.
სახში ზიან ქალები. ჩემ ოჯახში. ხავას კოფეს რაღაც.
There was a case when neighbors gathered at my house for coffee. All the neighbors were familiar with my story. My wife wanted to bring a towel from the bedroom.
კარებთან
Went there, tried to open the door, but it didn't open. Something from the inside prevented it from opening. There was a large chest of drawers in the bedroom,
კარები
next to the door, very heavy. 2 men wouldn't lift it.
რაჯერმარქია კამოდი 1-10 სანტიმეტრი იქითა. რო კარები
This chest of drawers was moved so that it blocked the door.
კამოდია მოდგმული კარებზე.
My children and I were not at home.
ბავშვებისგან
The neighbors immediately assumed that this was the work of aliens.
ვერ შედიოდა ოთახში ვერ
The chest of drawers was moved about 10 centimeters. There was no earthquake.
რაჭველი ქალი არის მაგის ქვარი ჩემ ბავშვს ნათლია.
How could it have moved by itself?
კარებზე არც მზემლი ტრასენი არც მიწის არაფერი არის.
Together, the women pounced on the door and pushed the chest of drawers back,
ამ ხელაზე მოდებულია კარებზე.
entered the room, but there was no one there.
კაი ჯანიანი ქალები არიან. შევიდა შე გარავინ არ არის. აი როგორ შეიძლება რომ ამ ხელა გამოდი თავისის გამოიწიოს. ხო და კარები და შიგნია.
It's just that if you think about it, you can go crazy.
ადამიანი რო ფიქრობაზე შეიძლება
There was another case.
სარელ ოთახში.
My wife was lying in a bed. She could not sleep. She was worried that I was not at home again. I was at a meeting in the forest. She was worried about how the meeting would go, whether I would return. Suddenly, a bright ray of light appeared in the sky. She was lying by the window, and this beam shone directly into her eyes. For 3 days, she couldn't see clearly. This blinding beam was directed straight into my eyes, she complained. There was another case. My daughter was gossiping with a neighbor's girl. They thought I wasn't meeting with aliens, but cheating. My daughter's eyes were so swollen, she practically didn't see anything for several days. It turns out that they can come whenever they want. Maybe they are here even now, and I'm sure that it is so. Only no one sees them. They come and do whatever they want. I was actively involved in sports when I was young, and over time I started having heart problems, and I told to this alien woman about it. After another meeting in the forest, she turned me off, and when I woke up, I felt pain and burning. I lifted my shirt and saw this imprint. Since then, my heart has never been bothering me again. And there was a case when the same prints were from the neck to the tailbone. Everything disappeared after 5-6 days. Below in the photographs, are these your scars too? This is a scar after surgery on the arm, after a fracture. Below, there is a scar from a post-operative wound that festered, tormented me for 3 years. The surgery was performed by Tamara Sheishvili at the Aramans Clinic in 1986. And this alien woman cured me. There is no trace remained from all these surgeries now. Can you describe a flying saucer? Yes, the flying saucer was 6-7 meters wide and 4-5 meters high. Did you ask her how the universe works? I wanted to, but I couldn't. What did she tell you about Earth's future? Your planet won't live long, she told me. Why? Will be an atomic explosion or what? I asked her. I cannot tell you this. I keep thinking about it. If she said what would happen, maybe we could have prevented this. And you haven't asked her how far advanced they are in comparison with Earth. No, I haven't asked her. I wasn't smart enough. No, you had been hypnotized. Yes. On the eve of the meeting, I came up with prepared questions. Kales told me what kind of question I should ask, but when I was in front of her, I forgot all the questions that I had prepared to ask her. After that, I lamented why I didn't ask what I wanted to. She somehow diverted my thoughts. They knew how to do it. I couldn't find out anything. I didn't find out a single secret to help humanity. For example, how to prolong life. Did she tell you how long you would live? She joked once, more than 100 years. How many exactly? Maybe even 127, she said and laughed. And how long do they live? That's exactly what I have asked her many times, but she has never given me an answer. Maybe on your planet you live 400, 500 years or more. It's none of your business, she replied.
она доброжелательная,
Да.
она
А
мягкая.
ей sen rugur
How did she treat you? Very well. We were like brother and sister, especially after I stopped pestering
Красивая
her.
была женщина,
Didn't
да?
work out. She was a beautiful woman, wasn't she? Yes, she was indeed. Was she a tall woman? Yes, she was 15-20 centimeters taller than me. Whoa, very tall woman indeed. Yes, she was. I'm 170, used to be 175 centimeters. It turns out she was under 190. What area did she want you to be a specialist in? She wanted to teach me how to heal incurable diseases.
Допустим, у нее кожа,
What kind of skin she had?
сама.
Not very white, slightly darker than a Slav.
Акцентиком, да.
What accent did she have? The accent was heard in every word, neither Russian nor Tatar, distorted Georgian and distorted Russian, but she spoke clearly. She repeated if it was necessary. Gesticulated with her hands and feet, with her eyes. In any case, she conveyed what she wanted to say.